It's a new book alert. If you're a new quilter or an experienced quilter, this book's for you. Hi, it's Donna Robertson with Fabric Cafe. I'm introducing my brand new book, Make It Easy with 3-Yard Quilts. I think quilting should be fast, fun, and easy. And if you are a new quilter, you're going to love these patterns. They're super easy. If you're an experienced quilter and you need a gift in a hurry, this is fast. And with our easy piecing strategies, every one of these patterns are fun to make. So let's get started. So the first quilt that we're going to talk about is Affinity. It's a wonderfully fun quilt to make. It has 2 different blocks. They're super easy to put together. And we've got some other little tricks, like you can use a directional fabric in this block here. So let's put it on the table and talk about it. So like I said, this is a super easy pattern to put together because we use those easy strategies that I was telling you about. And let's start out by showing you the first block. Now you can use a directional fabric. This is not a directional fabric, but you could use a directional fabric. And the pattern is written so that you cut a rectangular piece like this, and then you sew pieces on the side, one here and one there. Now if you're a beginner, you can see how easy that is. If you're an experienced quilter, you're going to see how fast it goes together. The second block is also very easy. Now with this one, we are going to do a little strip piece method right here. Whoops, let me pull this one in. So you're going to have a small piece like this, 3 strips. You cut the little piece, and then you are going to add pieces on the side, and then you are going to add pieces on the top and the bottom, and then you add a strip piece on this side. It's all very super easy to make this block. So let's look at the fabric and see how beautiful this fabric is. This is our number 1 fabric, and we do have our strategy with 3-yard quilts to always put your focus fabric in the number 1 position. So that's going to be here. Then you're going to compare the 2 remaining pieces, and you put the lightest in the number 2, you put the darkest in the number 3 area of the pattern. Now if you'd like to see how easy this is and do a little sew along with us, be sure to like and subscribe because we're doing a sew along with this particular quilt, and it's coming up in the near future. So this particular quilt kit is called Tropical Paradise. It's the Affinity pattern from Make It Easy. Now this quilt is called Diversion, and I kind of did that because I feel like quilting is a little bit of diversion from all of the other things that are going on in your life. But what makes an interesting quilt that's also easy is by giving it 3 different blocks. So we have 1 block, we have 2 blocks, and we have 3 blocks. So let's put it on the table and talk about it. I keep saying this, make it easy. So how much easier can you get than making a square? That is your number 1 block. So it's pretty easy with your beautiful fabric here, and it also can be a directional fabric so that you don't have to turn this block. Now the second block is just a teeny bit more work with that, but it's not hard at all. You're going to strip piece and make a 4 patch, and then you're going to border that on all 4 sides. Easy, easy. This one is the 3rd block, and it's going to be the same way. You've got a square, you're going to strip piece this, you're going to put sides on it. And so you have 3 very easy blocks, but when you put them all together, it gives a really easy pattern, a lot to look at. So it does have a lot of differences in it, and it holds your interest. So our number 1 fabric is not a directional fabric, but you could use directional fabric in this. So if you have a kitty cat fabric, all the kitty cats going one way, they won't be standing on their head. They would go the right direction. Then our number 2 fabric, you compare 2 and 3. The lightest will go here, 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 and the darkest is going to go here and here. It is a beautiful fabric, a beautiful kit. And if, you know, the thing about 3-yard quilts is that any fabric goes in any one of our patterns. You just need 3 1-yard cuts. And if you'd like to see these patterns and some other fabrics, be sure to tune in on Thursday because we're going to be going over more detail how to make the quilts, and we're going to show you alternate fabrics. Now the name of this particular kit is called Spirograph. It's the Diversion pattern from the book, Make It Easy. Now this particular quilt is called Elemental, and I can't help but think about one of my favorite detectives, Sherlock Holmes, and it's elemental, my dear Watson. So it's an easy, easy, easy quilt to make. So let's put it on the table and talk about it. You know, when I started this book, the concept of doing lots of easy quilts, I looked for all of the different elements that would make a quilt interesting but still stay easy. So I want to show you one of my tricks on this one. So this is a super easy block, but what I did in this block is I used all three of the fabrics. So you can see how that gives it a lot of interest. Now we're not using any half square triangles in any of these patterns. They're all done with easy strip piecing and blocks. So it's going to be a breeze for you to make these quilts. So this is block number 1, and then block number 2 is right here. So you can see how this one looks. Now, the fabric for this particular quilt is absolutely gorgeous. I love blues and yellows and greens together, and this one just incorporates all of them. So the number 1 fabric is this wonderful floral, and it's going to be in both of the blocks. And then you have your number 2 fabric. The number 2 always adds a little bit of a resting place for your eye, because a quilt can be really busy like this, but it will gravitate toward the lighter fabric to give yourself a little rest in between all of the other things going on in the quilt. And then the number 3 fabric is this blue, and it's going to be bordering this one and add a little accent to the first block. We have all of these fabrics that we're showing you today. We have them as kits, and you can find more information by clicking on the word more or see more below. So the name of this particular quilt is Sunny Batiks. It's the elemental quilt pattern from the book Make It Easy. Now this pattern is called Frolic, and it just made me feel happy whenever I made it. I just loved it. It was bright, it was cheery, and let's put it on the table and talk about it. Now this is absolutely beautiful fabric, and I can see this, as we mentioned earlier, that it would make a good gift quilt. It would be great if you have somebody that maybe needs a little cheering up and they get this beautiful quilt. It would be a good baby quilt if you had someone having a little girl that would like to have a pretty soft quilt for their room. Now, the number 1 fabric is going to go in this block here, and we do have 2 very simple blocks, just a bordered block and then a 3-part block down here. So the number 1 fabric is going to go here, and one of my favorite things to do is add that fabric to the borders because it kind of frames it in that beautiful, beautiful fabric. And the number 2 fabric is going to be that resting place that I mentioned earlier, and it's going to go everywhere that you see the light color in this quilt. The number 3 is your accent color, and it just kind of holds the design in. You know, those 3 strategies that we use for the 1, 2, and 3 is what makes a 3-yard quilt very interesting to look at and easy for you to pick out the fabrics. Now, we do have another added benefit for this book. If you've ever used our patterns, you know that we give you the enlargement instructions for every one of these patterns. Now we're showing you lap quilts, but you can also make a twin or a king queen just by adding kits. If you have 1 kit, you make a lap. If you make 2 kits, you'll be able to make a twin, and 4 kits will make a king queen. And what is an added benefit? You can get our brand new book free if you buy at least 3 kits. So you'll want to check out that deal. Now this particular quilt is called, the kit is Peaceful Petals. It's the Frolic pattern from the book Make It Easy. Now this pattern is called Levity, and I always like to tell you a little bit why I named them what I named them. But I thought this was interesting because it looked like these blocks were just floating on top of this color. And so I thought of levity or lighthearted or floating, so we named this one Levity. Let's put it on the table and talk about it. I mentioned that this one is called Levity and that it is kind of a lighthearted kind of concept. Well, this is a 1-block quilt. And for those of you who are new to our patterns, a 1-block just simply means you can get into that sewing zone and you can make the blocks over and over. And when you put them together, it looks like a totally different quilt. So let me show you this particular 1-block because it is very, very easy. So to start with, we're going to be doing a rectangle like this. Simple, simple, simple. You'll cut a long piece of fabric, cut it into rectangles, and then you make a strip piece and you sew it on the side here. You take that same strip piece and you rotate it and you sew it over here. And when you get through, you have this block. Super simple, easy to make, and then it gets rotated. So that one block made over and over then turns this way and that way. It'll just turn and it'll go together and you'll get this look as if this is the background with these floating on top. Now the fabric, love this fabric. It's kind of a watercolor circle and it's going to go everywhere you have here. Now this is the number 1 fabric, and as we continue to talk about, the number 2 fabric is going to be your background. It really causes the design of the pattern to kind of float forward so that it just is the background, a little resting place. And in this particular quilt, it's very important that your number 3 fabric is the darkest, because it's going to go to the background and look like these are floating on top. And it's all done with just color placement. Super, super easy. Now we do have all of these fabrics that we're showing today as yardage. So if you want to make pillows or a bigger binding for your quilt, then check out our yardage as well, because it is on the website. Now this one is called Soothing Circles. It's a Levity pattern from the book, Make It Easy. Now this one's called Panache, and I really like this quilt. It's kind of near and dear to my heart. It was a lot of fun to design, and it's so simple to put together. It almost looks like you've got something wild going on here with some kind of weaving with the blocks, but it is easy. Let's put it on the table and I'll show you how it works. So this is the number 1 fabric, and it's going to go in the center of this block, and I'm going to show you how these blocks are made in just a second. So this would go here, and then this is the number 2 fabric, and it can go here. Now this is a little different, and that is that the number 2 fabric is not just lighter, it is the smaller print. It still gives you a place to go to as you change, like your eyes are changing gears. But what's cool is this could be a double focus fabric. So you can use 2 different fabrics that you want to highlight. And then the number 3, this is the trick for using the double focus, is that you need a little bit of separation between the 2 so that you can actually focus on each of those. So that's why we call it a double focus. Now let me block these squares out so you can see, because if you're a newbie, you might be saying, she said these were easy, but how in the world is this easy? I'll show you. Now the first block is going to be super easy. I think I used quite a few rectangles in this particular book, but that's what you're going to start out with. You're going to start out with a rectangle. And then you're going to do strip piecing. You'll sew 3 strips together, and you'll cut what we call units off of that long strip piecing. And it will be sewn to this side and this side. Super, super easy. There is your block all finished. So on the second block, you're going to do a strip assembly, and you're going to sew 3 pieces together, long strips. You're going to cut the unit like this, and then instead of piecing the sides, you've pieced the center of this block, and then you add solid color on each side, and there is your block. So super easy to make. And the name of this quilt is Mediterranea. That's a Panache pattern from the Make It Easy book. Now this one is called Skyline, and you might wonder why I named it Skyline. So I'm going to go back in time to my very first quilt market, and that was back in the early 80s. And whenever we finished at the quilt market, we went up to the hotel room, and it was, when I walked in the room, the window curtains were open, and out across from us was a building, and the lights were all in different places. And I remember being so inspired by all the quilting around me that I thought, that would be a cool quilt. So let's put it on the table and talk about this varying areas that could have been the skyline of Houston. So like I was saying, being in that dark hotel room and looking out at all of the office buildings around the hotel that we were staying in, I could see blocks of light. You could tell where the workaholics were, because certain areas had blocks of lights in the office and the rest of the building would be dark. And sometimes there would be some right up above each other. And I just thought it would be a cool quilt to do someday. And so from the early 80s to now, I finally did a quilt. And when I finished doing this one, I thought that kind of looks the way I was doing, thinking about that skyline of Houston. So our first block is right here. And this is another one where how do you make it easy but still hold interest? You give them 3 different blocks. So our first block is right here. We did a little strip piece right here. Then we bordered it with a skinny piece and a wider piece. And then this one we did the same way, but we used a little rectangle in there, bordered it with a skinny, well, we used another strip piece, but we used a larger piece here in the middle, bordered it with a skinny piece and with a wider piece. And then down here we had a more traditional block that was strip pieced, and then the side pieces are put on there. So it was super easy to do. Each one of these blocks stand alone, easy, easy, easy. But then when you put them together, you get all of that diversity that you would see if you were looking out at a skyline. The number 1 fabric is this. It's going to go everywhere that you see the focus fabric on the quilt. The number 2 fabric is, again, that lighter shade so that it creates a background or a place for your eye to kind of move around to. And then the third one is the number 3 fabric, goes here and here. So it really goes together to make a beautiful, beautiful quilt. And you know, every one of these quilt kits are available at fabriccafe.com. But please remember that we have limited quantities. This one is called Color Magic. It's the Skyline pattern from Make It Easy with 3-yard quilts. Now this quilt is called Tenderness, and you can see the little stylized heart showing up here kind of on its side, and then the other block is right here. So whenever I designed this one, I like to have that interesting number 2 in the background, but it still gives you that resting place. So let's put this one on the table and talk about it. You know, quilt designing is sort of like coloring outside the lines because you don't really know where you're going to start necessarily. Every time we start a new book, we have a clean slate in front of us, and I just start playing, and I make all these different kind of blocks, and I put them in my computer program, and that's what happened with this particular one. I was making different types of blocks, and whenever I came upon this block, and I'm putting it in there, I thought, well, that kind of looks like a little heart on kind of on the side. You've seen those little wonky hearts that you see in different artist renditions. So whenever I made this particular one, we're going to start off with a rectangle, and just like that. Then we're going to add a strip piece unit here on the side, and that gives you the beginnings of your little heart. And then we're going to add a strip over on the side like this and this. So you end up with your rectangle and then your strip piece, and then you're going to put this side on, then you're going to put that side on. Super, super easy. And then you have a bordered block here. So that's really how simple this one is to put together. So you have this beautiful watercolor print that's going to go here. We also put a little bit out in the border. And then, as I was saying, the number 2, it can have lots of interest. As long as it is lighter than the others, it'll really work like a number 2 does, which gives you your resting place. And then your number 3 fabric, which is identical to this number 2 fabric, only just a different color. So they've done it a tone on tone here with the green on white here. That goes here in this spot and on the border. So it is a beautiful kit, and it's called Floral, Bliss. Tenderness is your pattern. It's from the book Make It Easy with 3-Yard Quilts. So which one of these patterns are you going to make first? Do you have a favorite? Is there one that caught your eye? Tell us in the comments section. We would love to know. And if you really like fast and easy patterns, be sure to watch the video that pops up next. This is Donna Robertson with Fabric Cafe. Thanks so much for joining us.